Okay, so far this is what we got. We play the game and we die and disappears and we can restart the game. But if you think about it, we have a little problem, and the problem is that if we die and we click the OK button, what happens is that we go very quickly and we start the game right away. So the user doesn't have any time to react to it. I press OK, and then what happens is that the game starts immediately. So we want to give the user some time so the user can restart the game. And how do we do this? Well, we need to create another state for the game. We need to create a state that happens before the game starts. So let's go to Visual Studio and let's go to the game manager, and right now we only have one state, that is the game over state, but we want to create another state. So public static bool, and we're going to call this state game has started, and in the beginning, at the start of the game has started is going to be equal to false. So at the beginning of the game, this is going to be equal to false, and if this is going to be equal to false, then we don't want to do certain things. For example, in the column spawner, one thing that we don't want to do is that we don't want to instantiate a column at the start, because we want to give the user some time. So we're gonna comment this out. So, and here in the game manager, I mean in the update method where it says game manager game over equals false, we're only spawning if game over is equal to false. But we also want to stop spawning, or we don't want to spawn if the game hasn't started yet. So here we can say and. So if game over equals false and game manager dot game over, or game has started, sorry, is equals to false. So yeah, to false. So if the game over is equal to false and game has started is also equal to false, then we're going to run this code. Okay, so I was wrong. Okay, so in here is not if it's equal to false, but if it's equal to true, because we only want to start spawning columns if game has started is equal to true and game over is equal to false. Okay, so that's better. And what's going to happen is that we're not going to spawn, and in the bird script, what we want to do is that at the start of the game, so in here we want to make the gravity equal to 0 at the start of the game. So we're going to say rb.gravity scale equal to 0. We don't want to have gravity at the start of the game. We only want to have gravity when we first when we first tap on the screen. So let's go to Unity editor and let's play the game and see what happens. Okay, so apparently this is not working. We have an error in the console saying that this is not okay. What we're doing here basically is that we're trying to access the rigid body RB, the rigid body before we actually get the component. So this is obviously gonna give us an error. So that's why order is important in Unity. The order is important because if you try to access the component, the RB component, before we actually get the component, then it's going to give us an error. Now we are getting the component first, and then we're accessing it over here. So let's try to play the game now and see what happens. Okay, so we play the game. We can see that at the start of the game, the gravity is 0, and the columns are not spawning. All right. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to go to our game manager, and we know that game started is equal to false at the beginning of the game, but we're going to create a method. So let's create a method public void, and we're going to call this method game has started, like this. So when we call this method, we're going to set game has started equal to true. And when we call this method, this is going to be true, and then the columns will be able to spawn normally. And the trick over here is to go to the bird class. So the main thing is it happens in the bird class, because in the bird class we have the update method. We are checking for the user input. So here we also have to check if we press the button and the game over is equal to false, we have to check if the game has already started. So let's check this inside here. Let's say if game manager dot game has started equals false. So if it's false, if we tap on the screen and it's false that the game has started, then we want to flap. So we want to flap. We also want to call the game has started method from the game manager. So game manager dot game has started, like this. And we also want to spawn a column when we first tap the screen. So we need a reference to the column manager, column spawner, sorry. So how do we create a reference to the column spawner? You should know it by now, but let's do it. Let's create a public. So it's public, then column spawner, like this. And this will be our reference to the column spawner. Now that we have a reference, we need to actually set the reference in the editor. Don't forget about that, but we'll do that later. Now we're going to say column spawner dot instantiate column. But you can see that we cannot access it. This is, and why is this? If we go to our column spawner, we can see that our instantiate column is private. We need to make it public. Okay, so let's make it public. And now that we've made it public, we can say column spawner dot instantiate column, like this. So basically what we're going to do if the game hasn't started is that we're going to flap normally, as we always do, but we're going to call the game has started from the game manager. So we will be able to spawn columns. We will be able to spawn columns because this condition will be true, and we will be able to spawn columns. And we will also what we will also do is that we will instantiate a column. So we can do this before we call the game has started. So what we're going to do first is that we're going to instantiate a column. So we're calling the instantiate column from column spawner. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to make this code in here run and execute. All right, so we have that. So if game manager.game has started equals false, then we're gonna call all of this code. Game manager.game has started is gonna be true by the end of this code. So here we have to type in an else. So if the game has started, then we only want to flap. So let's just paste in the code here. All right, so as you can see, we are repeating code in here and in here. So in Unity, whenever you're repeating code, it is a good practice to actually create a method with the code that it's repeating itself, and then just call the method from here. So we can create a method called, the same way we did with bear rotation, we can create a method here called flap, for example. And it's gonna be a method of type void, a normal method with a very simple method, and then we're just gonna hit Ctrl X and Ctrl V. And then we're just gonna call the flap method from here. So command copy or control copy and just delete this code and paste in the flap. Right, so now everything should work. Apparently everything should work. The only thing that we need to do, remember, is to set the reference of the column spawner to the bird. All right, so now we're here. Let's select the bird, and it's waiting for the reference of the column spawner. So attach the reference of the column spawner to the bird script, click play. So now everything should look like this. And when you start the game, okay, so when you start the game, gravity, you apply a velocity to the bird and there's no gravity. So we need to change that. So if we actually are starting the game for the first time, we need to actually set the rb.velocity.gravity scale equals to 0.8. So gravity applies normally now. If we tap this, the first time that we tap, we need to apply the gravity like this. And now let's go to Unity editor, hit play. And now if we tap, everything will look normal. Perfect. and everything works fine. All right, so that's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.